Hello everybody. We are now going to resume our work on this MVC sample app, and we've made our way all the way up to page 43 in the PDF document that's posted in our unit folder. And this section, the first one that we're going to work on in section 9, is about filters. So let's talk real briefly about what filters do, and then we'll go ahead and start coding. But basically, well, he's got a nice little description here. Why don't we just read that? It says, filters are custom classes that provide both a declarative and programmatic means to add pre-action and post-action behavior to controller action methods. So really what happens is we will be able to do things through our controller by use of these filters. So some of them will fall into a few different categories, so that we will have action filters, and that's one of the four types. And a lot of these are ones that, some of them are actually kind of automatic and some of them are not. But look at that first one there, that's kind of an interesting one. Output cache actually kind of stores an action for a specified period of time. So sometimes when you're doing something, you don't necessarily want to put something right back up on the screen. You want to delay it a little bit or buffer it while something else is happening or while a person is thinking or whatever the case may be, and you can control that. You can also choose to set up authorization things and also do some error handling, but more importantly what happens as a result of the error, not necessarily the traditional error handling. Well, the filters that we have available to us fall into these four categories, the action ones we just talked about. But the authorization ones are actually kind of built into the structure. So you guys saw that when we were playing with some of the other MVC stuff, how we could check those little boxes and turn like sign-on features just on. And then we also have these result and exception filters that will react to certain actions that result as well. Right, let's go ahead and jump down to the bottom of 43 now and start working on the actual exercise. Now, once again here, they are asking us to build another new application, and this one's going to be a filters demo. So let's go ahead and do that. If you have your previous solution open, go ahead and close that. So that's what I'm doing here. This is kind of becoming a little bit routine. And same procedure. We're going to go to File, New, Project. We're going to choose an ASP.NET web application with the .NET framework in Visual Studio 2017. Earlier versions, you won't see a little .NET there because it's just assumed. But you know you're on the right one when you see the MVC in the description. Just remember that. This one will be called MVC, no spaces, Filters Demo. I'm putting it in the same folder on my OneDrive. That's where I've been putting mine. Once again, they want us to select empty and choose the folder structure for MVC. No authentication is necessary at this point. Go ahead and click OK. And as we've been doing all along here, our procedures, we're going to go right to the controllers folder. We're going to add a controller so we have something we can interact with. We are going to choose the empty option again and go ahead and choose add. And right away, let's create a home controller. And it'll just take a moment here as it scaffolds out the structure for the home controller. Now, the first thing that we're going to play with here, it looks like, bottom of page 46, is we're going to add an action filter that's going to control the output cache. And what our objective here is we want to actually put the filter in that's going to delay whatever action that we're triggering we're going to delay it by 15 seconds. And that's kind of a long time, actually, in terms of the web. But let's go ahead and do the work that they're suggesting. They have some code here that they want us to throw in. And I'm just going to grab it right from the PDF and drop it in. And here's where the author placed it. Put it right in this spot. So you can see the syntax there is just output cache, duration 15. Pretty intuitive to understand what that is. Notice how that's put in square brackets, right? So it kind of like sits almost like separate from the regular code in that capacity. And then they do want us to change the index method here too. So they want us to change from an action result to a string, because right at this point we're just putting text on the screen. So we're just demonstrating that capability. So this is an ASP.NET MVC filters tutorial, just like that. All right, let's go ahead and launch this now. All right. Now, what I want you to pay attention to here is as soon as like this, default gobbledygook gets out of the way, I want you to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Kaboom! Did anything happen? No. Right, we didn't tell anything different to happen. We just put the filter in. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's really going to delay 15 seconds. Of course, maybe while it was launching, maybe you could argue that 15 seconds went by, but that's not really the case. Now, there's some more code that he wants us to add here. Let's go back and grab that code. So this next batch, he's got output cache duration 20. I'm just grabbing it right from the PDF, folks. Pasting it in. So we go right here. And yes, I am going to clean it up. Now, those of you that remember your basic ASP.NET stuff, you guys know that what this does is it posts the system time, converts it to a string, and then outputs it, which is what's going on here. But notice that we are putting in output cache duration 20 seconds. All right. So this time, go ahead and launch it. Let's let it load up. Okay, it loaded up. Then the URL that they want placed in here is home, because we are working off the home controller. And then we want to throw in the name of the method that we just created, which is get current time. Okay, that certainly wasn't a 15-second delay, right? But hit refresh. You guys notice the time didn't change? Hit refresh again. Did it change? Okay, that was maybe been 5 to 10 seconds. So let's count that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's probably about 20 seconds. So I'm hitting refresh, and now the time changed. Now watch again. Hitting refresh. It's not changing. Yeah, so it's buffering it, basically, is what it's doing. It's not allowing it to redo that action for another 20 seconds. Now it's probably been almost 20 seconds. I'm watching actually the timer on my video recorder, so now I can refresh it. So you guys catching how that works? All right, so the output is cached for 20 seconds. Same thing was happening with that string we were returning at first, but when we went to hit the refresh, it's sending the same thing back. So we're not really seeing a result. All right. So that's that big demo on that one. All right. The next section he covers, bottom of page 49, he starts to talk about custom filters. So we are going to actually take an action here. So the bottom of page 49, it is a step, but it doesn't seem to actually indicate it as a step, which is kind of interesting, I suppose. But he says, let's take a look at a simple example of a custom filter by creating a new folder in your project with action filters. Add one class for which right-click on Action Filters folder and select Add Class. All right. All right. So we need to create a folder now called Action Filters. And what I'm doing actually right now is I'm just scrolling down and looking to make sure that that's actually a step. And I wish it would be labeled because it's basically not labeled. So the last paragraph of page 49 is actually what I would call a step or an action here. So in your project, find the root of your project, right? Not the solution, which is way at the top of Solution Explorer, but the next one down, and do a right click and then add a folder. Call this Action Filters, capital A, capital F, no spaces, like this. Then on that folder, please right-click and add a new item. What I'm looking to add is actually a class, which does appear at the bottom of the list here. But if you prefer to bring up that whole dialogue, and I think that's what he does in the example, so why don't we just do it the same way he's doing. So we go add new item, and then we'll look for, in Visual C#, way at the top, a class file. I'm assuming he wants us to name it something. He does, and it is my log action filter. Go ahead and click add. I'm sure it's all spelled correctly. So now we just have a basic empty class file with standard imports. All right. And one thing that is going to happen is we are going to need to do a little bit of adjusting to some code here. All right, and what I'm trying to figure out here, folks, is I'm looking at the bottom of page 50 here, and he's turning this file into the one that you see in the tutorial. So I think that maybe the easy way to do this, and I'm just going to kind of do this incrementally. First, I'm going to replace all the using statements. Right, some of them are unimplemented as of yet. It looks like I doubled that one up, which is good. All right. Next adjustment we're going to make is we're going to extend the action filter attribute class. So we're just going to go colon action filter attribute, which auto-selected there. And then we're going to start to add some stuff in between the curly braces here. And, you know, it spans pages, so I'm going to proceed carefully. First, I'm going to throw in this first line. And yes, I do see the red underline. And that actually requires curly braces as well. So let's add that piece in. So we'll put that right here. Right. And just to follow the format that they're using in the book for laying out the code, we'll do it like this. Don't worry about any underlines yet. We're going to deal with those one at a time. And then I'm just going to simply go through and grab the rest of this code from the PDF, being really careful to get all the right stuff here. And you can see sometimes that copy paste is more challenging in these types of PDF documents. You see, for whatever reason, with my mouse, my scroll wheel isn't allowing me to grab all of it. So I'm going to like actually zoom out, and I figure this way I can grab all of it at once. So my clever strategy. If one way doesn't work, we find another way to make it work. I guess if you're really concerned about getting the layout to look very proper, you can go through and do what I'm doing right now. And frankly, this isn't really necessary. Computer really does not care about how this stuff is laid out in the code because it all compiles to binary anyhow. But if you want to look at it and read it, sometimes it's nice when it's all laid out in a nice format. So if you want to, please go ahead and do what I'm doing. You can see a lot of these things should be on separate lines, all these variables. Kind of like this. I'm going to go ahead and do a Control-S to save that. And then hopefully you have something that looks like this. That's just so you can see all the code. I'm going to jump back over to my instruction set now. Move that back over to the second screen. Make it a little larger so my eyes can actually read it. Now we're going to jump over to that home controller. And we're going to set that log filter to go into the home controller so it'll run from there. And really all that we need to do to make that happen, which is kind of interesting, is two things. First, I'm going to add right above the class declaration, so inside the namespace, but above the class declaration, I'm going to add a line, and I'm going to paste in the filter. You guys notice how the light bulb popped up? And little quick actions. And it's recognizing that somewhere in my application, I do have an MVC filters demo, action filters, yada, 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 which means I need to add that system, well, it's not a system library, add the library basically from the class file I just created. So in the home controller, I'm now using my own class file. So I'm pulling in all that capability into my application. So you see the square brackets, it indicates to you that it's a what? A filter. All right. Now what they want us to do is to run the application. But as we're running this application, they want us, they're not really worried about what's happening in the browser. They want us to watch the output window. All right, so I'm going to hit play. When that browser window comes up, I'm going to grab it, kind of shuffle it off to the side here. So we'll let it do its thing. Making sure it's loading up okay. Now, the strange thing is my output window is not coming up. Is yours coming up, guys? Yeah, it came up and disappeared right away. All right. Which doesn't help, right? But I think that after we stop the application, oh, actually it's down here. All right, there it is. Yeah. The output, it was down there. I was just missing it. But here's the output window. And notice what it did here is it built in, like it loaded up, shows all the stuff that was going on in the background. Shows you the stuff that got loaded. Right, and everything is loaded. And then I went to the point where I typed in that URL with the get current time in it, and it logged that. So what are we having it do? We're writing into our application custom logging. And you can do that. You can have your application write stuff to a console or write stuff to a text file to kind of keep track of what the application is doing. And, you know, as client-side programmers, we often don't think about that at all. But it is a technique that you can employ in just about every language. And in fact, it's real common with web-based output and with GUI output that you often have a console output that sometimes either drops directly to a text file or to a screen, and you can monitor what's going on. And even though it creates a little bit of overhead, the benefit is it also allows you to track down problems and kind of keep track of what's going on inside your app. All right, so that was section 9 that we just completed. We're going to move on and go to section 10. So we're moving on to this next section now, which is section 10. And I'm pulling the book back over to the screen here because there doesn't seem like there's a lot of actions aside from just like running the application. But the topic here are selectors. And here, notice that he says, action selectors are attributes that can be applied to action methods and are used to influence which action method gets invoked in response to a request. So not only are you like passing a parameter, but you're also allowing it to choose which method is actually going to execute as a result of the parameter being passed. So there's a few different types here. 3 types of action selector attributes. So action name, non-action, and action verbs. All right. So an action name is one that is used obviously for the name of an action, but it also allows people to run a different action than the one that's actually being called. So right now they're taking a look at the stuff that we just created in the previous chapter, and they're saying here that the home controller has 2 action methods. And what are they? One is this one that returns the string, right? And the get current time. So one returns the index, one returns the time. All right. So watch here. It says, let's apply the action name selector for get current time by writing action name current time above get current time as shown in the following code. So I'm seeing that as something that we need to do. So I'm highlighting it in my PDF as something I should pay attention to. And I see this right here being listed right above get current time. So I'm going to copy this and come over to my code. I do notice that I got all these output windows and whatnot open here. I'm going to try to minimize these so I can kind of just get in there. So he's asking us to put it right here. Now, I don't know if he wants us to mess with the output cache stuff is gone all of a sudden, right? So I'm not really too worried about that because it'll probably work either way. So let's go ahead and launch the application one more time. And you're going to catch this one pretty quickly. So really what we're doing is we're setting this little directive here that's going to run the page. And then when we switch URLs, right? And the URL that he wants us to type is home/current time. So we're going to come up here, type home, not get current time, but just current time, which is slightly shortened. And you notice it does the same thing. So if you have like a method name that's really long and verbose, which is good for you in your coding, so you know what you're doing, but it might not be as user-friendly for a URL, you can come in there and tweak that, make it shorter. You could just call it time, right? Whatever you want, it will allow you to do that. All right. Going back now, let's stop that from running. We have ones that are called non-action, and the description here says non-action is another built-in attribute which indicates that a public method of a controller is not an action method. Okay, so it says it shouldn't be treated as an action method. So let's take a look at the example that he's pointing out. So the top part of the document looks pretty much the same, but then notice a directive right here, right? So he's adding another method in here, but he's calling it non-action. Let's copy that and put it into our home controller. And I'm going to actually highlight this so I don't miss it next time. I don't know if you guys catch that, but I do that pretty often. Apparently I want to select the text before I highlight it. Copy first, then highlight. All right, let's drop that in right below this method. Yes, got to clean it up. Save it. Let's go ahead and run it again. And then the URL they want us to put in is home current time. All right, there's the time. Did we get that? So let's read those instructions real carefully again. All right, it is used when you want that a method shouldn't be treated as an action method. So the confusion for me here is we do have that action name here, and now we're saying non-action right afterwards. So we're thinking that it's going to trigger. The new method timeString is called from get. Oh, I see. See what we missed? Yeah. So let's highlight that too. So, excuse me. Thank you. So instead of returning this, so that's done below, we are returning, it's amazing how quickly I forget what we're returning, timeString, which is the method, code, you can't change it while the code's running. So we're basically going to call this method, so I can just actually copy the method name there and paste it in. So we're going to use an action name to trigger a method, which then calls a different method to happen. See that? Of course, probably what's going through your head is like, why on earth would you do all that? Why not just go ahead and do it? Well, there's probably scenarios in which that is the case. And you can see that it did trigger because it says time is, and it did end up running the same thing in the browser. And I'm hoping you guys got that to work all together. Now, notice if you try to throw in home and then call that method directly, you are not allowed to do it. Why? Because that filter above it says non-action. So it doesn't allow you to directly run it. The only way to invoke it is by another method or class or something calling it. All right. Now, from a logical standpoint, since we're just trying to put stuff up on the screen and demonstrate, it doesn't make sense why you would bother to do that. But from the standpoint of like having a programmatic reason with like business logic behind it, like you're writing an application where you don't want like a certain thing to happen unless another action is triggering it, it makes complete sense in that capacity, especially if you're application building. Once again, it's going to be driven by whatever business logic you got going on. So keep that in mind. All right, on to action verbs. This one says another selector filter you can apply is the action verbs attribute. And I want you to notice here that some of the things that you see in action verbs relate directly to the method that you see in forms, right? Related to kind of that whole get and post thing. So you see get and post there, but you also see the other ones that you don't usually see. Now, those of you that have had the Web 2 class, and you should have had it before you got here, know that get and post aren't the only methods. There are other methods. They are rarely used, and they're used in really weird capacities, but they are there, and the MVC framework does support them. So you see that aside from get and post, you also have put, delete, options, and patch. All right. So here they're pointing out, let's take a look at a simple example in which we will create employee controller. So I don't know if at this point if we want to go back to the previous example or if he's having us create it here. I'm not really sure. So my gut feeling on this is let's go back to the application that had that in it. You guys with me here? So I'm going to close this solution and try to remember which of those other applications had that. It was the second one, right? It wasn't, I think it was a controller demo. Let's just check that one out. Yep, there's the employee controller. So we'll just use that. You guys okay? Okay, I'll assume that's a yes. Don't even give you a chance to answer. All right, so we're going to take a look there at that particular one. I'm moving back off to the side here. And then I'm looking initially here at the action result. And they have actually expanded the string attributes that are being passed here, or the string parameters. So they're actually adding to this an equal sign and then double quotes, no name entered. And I want you to be really careful here. Do not copy and paste this from the PDF, because the PDF double quotes I'm noticing are smart quotes, which will really screw you up. Okay? Notice the rest of the stuff is the same. Now it says, let's add another action method with the same name using the following code. Now, that's really fascinating to me, because now, okay, so you see how this one sits? And the original version didn't have this. Okay, you guys are not seeing that in the video, right? Then I look down here where they're adding the other one, and that original one went back to what it was. Okay. All right, so I guess I'm going to switch it back to what it was. But we are going to add this other method, and basically the difference between them is kind of like this whole concept of doing overloads, or polymorphism, if you want to look at it that way, where it can take on multiple states depending on how many parameters you're passing to it. And so I guess what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to delete that. We can always bring it back if we need it. So the way I see this, right, and you guys should anticipate, is if we send in a parameter or we send in a name, it's going to put that name back on the screen. If we don't put one in, it should send back this to the screen. So let's go ahead and save this. I'm anticipating that the next action is go ahead and run it. All right. So it says here, when you run this application, let's see if it's true. So let's let it run. Right, and I forget that we put in all that weird stuff on this one. So what do we need to do? Employee, and then a name, right? And what happens? It breaks. Because the truth is, it can't handle both of them being present. It doesn't know which one is the one that you really intend on using. So here is the difference, folks. Here's the way that we overcome that. We're gonna add a little thing right inside here above the second one, the one that we just added, that says if we're doing HTTP GET, can you see the difference already? Then it's going to work, I'm assuming. So let's save this. Let's run it again. We'll type in the same URL once it loads up. And what does that do? It comes in here. We are passing in a name, right? But how are we passing in the name? In the form of a GET. So what happens is it realizes that it's in the form of a GET and gives us the second version. How do we know it's in the form of a GET? Well, when you're passing data in the browser window through the URL, that's a GET. If you can see it, it's a GET. All right, go ahead and stop the application from running. And folks, that completes section 10. And that completes our evening tonight too, because we're not going to be able to get too much further. So we were able to get through sections 9 and 10 in the second video here. And that I'm going to call an assignment component too. So if you can get those things to happen, that will be another assignment. All right, we will see you guys next time.